I honestly know so many people who started posting content and then within 3 to 6 months, they gave up. And maybe that's you. That was definitely me. I gave up multiple times before I really became consistent. And the thing is, in my experience, it's often not because people aren't getting enough views or they've run out of ideas or their videos just aren't performing well. It's often because the actual process of creating content is just so time consuming and difficult, especially if you're also working like a full-time or a part-time job while also trying to create content. Coming home after a long day's work and then having to do more work on your own content can be exhausting. And it really trips up a lot of people in my experience. I really struggle with this. Like I said, I gave up multiple times just because I didn't have the time and energy to invest in my own content. But over time, I've developed strategies to really reduce the friction as much as possible. So the bottleneck and the barrier isn't the actual creation process. For me, there's been two main kinds of friction. So the first is the actual setup and filming process. And then the second is in the editing and post-production process. Both have their own different types of friction, and I've found different solutions for each. So when it comes to the friction that setup and filming creates, there's a few mistakes that I've seen people make over and over again, including myself. And the first is just buying gear that you really don't need. It's super tempting when you're first getting started to go and buy the most expensive camera, the best lens, the best microphone. And don't get me wrong, it's nice to have and you can eventually upgrade to it. But what you're doing is you're creating more friction for yourself because you have to learn entirely new pieces of equipment. So for example, if you've never touched a mirrorless camera before, you're going to have to learn how to use a camera. And there's already enough time and energy that you're going to have to invest just in learning the camera itself before you even get to making a video with it. So my advice to people is always just start with what you've got, start with what you're familiar with. So if you know how to use your phone, you know how to film videos on your phone, just start with that because that's going to be super low friction. You can just set it up on a tripod, hit record, and you're good to go. Because what you're doing is you're actually prioritizing the habit of creating content. And that's what you're wanting to build. The second big mistake when it comes to the filming process is having to set up and pack down your setup or your studio every time you go to film. Now, this does depend a bit on your personal circumstances. So for me, when I first started, I was a roommate and I was filming in my bedroom. So I literally had to set up and pack down my equipment so that I would have space in my room. But as soon as I got my own space, I got my own office, I created a permanent setup. And if you've got enough space, then I highly recommend doing this. Find an area where you can film, where you can leave your gear set up permanently. So I've got my tripod set up permanently pretty much in the one spot with the camera on it. I've got my light always set up. So for me to set up now takes maybe 5 to 10 minutes, whereas before it would take me like 45 minutes. And on top of that, if you can't have a permanent place where you can set up, then definitely get into batch filming. So don't just set up, film one video and then pack down. Prepare like 2 to 3 videos at a time. Set up once, film all 3 videos in one sitting. That's going to save you heaps of time just in setup and pack down. All right, next let's talk a bit about the actual editing and post-production workflow and the friction that can create. Because this is often the most time-consuming part for people, especially video editing if you've never done it before. One mistake I've seen a lot of people make is getting lost in perfectionism. So it can be really tempting to spend ages just tweaking your video, trying to add this little thing here or this little thing there. And because you're learning all of these tools all at once, it could just take you forever. I remember some of my first videos probably took me weeks all up to edit, which is just ridiculous when I'm trying to get out at least one video a week. The thing you've got to remember is that your first like 50 to 100 videos are going to be probably pretty trash, and that's okay. You just got to get through them. It's just practice. It's just reps. So always prioritize speed and just publishing on a regular basis over making your videos look good. If you make enough videos, they will eventually look good. Don't waste time trying to get the first couple of videos to look perfect. The second big mistake that I really made in my early days was that I didn't have a clear system for my post-production. So what I would do is I would shoot my A-roll and then I would copy it onto my computer and then I would just start editing. I wouldn't have any clear folder structure. I wouldn't have any clear setup for my Final Cut Pro libraries. And then on top of that, I would jump around between different tasks in the actual edit. So I'd start with maybe a bit of A-roll editing and then I'd jump to maybe some music and then maybe I'd do some effects and graphics and then I'd maybe try and find some B-roll and then I'd jump back to the A-roll and then I'd just be constantly task switching and this would end up taking me ages. So for me, I developed a very clear step-by-step system where I would start with just my A-roll and I would finish that entire thing in one sitting. And then I would move on to selecting the music for the video. And then I would move on to selecting the B-roll and so on. So it was a clear step-by-step order that I could follow for every edit. And this drastically improved my edit times because I wasn't just constantly jumping around task switching and getting distracted. And just doing this alone helps reduce my edit times from like a week to a day. And once again, just remember, done is way better than perfect. Don't worry about trying to make your edits perfect. Once you've got a solid edit done and you're happy enough, just export it and publish it. And then just move on to the next video. Because again, each project you edit is just a learning experience. You'll pick up new tools, new keyboard shortcuts, all sorts of things that you can take into that next edit and make that next edit that 1% better. So that's just a few things that I've personally done to reduce the friction in my actual video creation process. And for me, it's honestly one of the key factors that's determined why I'm actually still creating content after 5 years. And I am telling you, if you can just stick with content creation for more than a year, you're already ahead of like 99% of other people out there who start making content. And that in itself is something to be really proud of. Now, if you found that helpful, I've got a couple of free resources in the description to help you out. So one is a script writing template. Again, templates are really helpful when it comes to reducing friction. You can plug it straight into your Notion and you've got a preset step-by-step order of how to create your scripts every time you want to make a new YouTube video. Or if you're focusing on Final Cut Pro, then I've also got a keyboard shortcut PDF, which you can use as a reference when you're trying to speed up your editing. And if you want to learn my entire editing process, that system that I mentioned earlier, I've actually got a full course on it. There's also a link in the description. Otherwise, again, if it was helpful, please leave me a like. Feel free to subscribe for more videos like this. It really helps me out. Or if you want to dive deeper into some Final Cut Pro editing tutorials, then I've got a whole bunch of them right here.